Captain Jiwan pressed her face against the cool metal of the observation window and stared at the thing floating in space before them. The massive alien ship hung in the darkness like a sleeping giant. Its black surface seemed to absorb the light from nearby stars, making it look like a whole cutout of space itself. She had been exploring this empty corner of the galaxy for 3 months with her crew aboard the exploration vessel New Sol. They were supposed to be mapping new star systems and looking for planets that humans could maybe live on someday. It was boring work most of the time. Just endless empty space and rocks floating around stars, but this was different. This was the first alien ship any human had ever found. The ship was huge, much bigger than anything humans had ever built. Jiwan guessed it was at least 10 times the size of New Sol, maybe more. Strange symbols covered its hull in patterns that made her eyes water when she looked at them too long. The symbols seemed to move and shift even though she knew that was impossible. Behind her, the bridge crew worked quietly at their stations. Everyone was trying to act normal, but Jiwan could feel the excitement in the air. This was the moment they had all dreamed about. First contact with another intelligent species. Minho looked up from his communication station. His young face was bright with excitement. Captain, I have been sending signals for 2 hours now. All kinds of signals, radio waves, light patterns, even mathematical sequences. Nothing works. They are not answering it. Aljuan walked over to his station and looked at the displays. Maybe they cannot hear us, she said. Try different frequencies. Maybe their ears work differently than ours. I already tried everything, Captain Minho said. He pushed buttons and adjusted dials on his control panel. I used every frequency we know about. I even tried some of the old Earth languages in case they learned our radio signals somehow. Still nothing. Dr. Sumin stood up from her science station and walked over to them. She was the ship's expert on alien life, even though she had never actually seen any aliens before today. Her scanner was beeping softly in her hands. I am getting strange readings, she said. The energy patterns coming from that ship are like nothing in our computer databases. This technology is incredibly advanced. Captain, maybe thousands of years ahead of what we can do. How advanced? Jiwan asked. Suman shook her head. I cannot even guess. The power source alone is something we do not understand. It is not nuclear fusion like our ships use. It is not antimatter either. It is something completely new. Engineer Kiwan looked up from his station. Captain, the ship appears to be damaged. I am detecting hull breaches in several places. Their engines are not working properly. Life support systems are failing. Life support. Jiwan felt her heart beat faster. That means there might be living beings inside. Yes, Captain Kiwan nodded. I am reading faint life signs. Multiple creatures inside the ship. They appear to be alive, but barely. Jiwan made her decision. We have to help them. Minho, keep trying to contact them. Tell them we want to help. Kiwan, prepare a rescue shuttle. Sumin, get your medical equipment ready. We might have injured aliens over there. The crew jumped into action. Everyone had trained for this moment, even though they never really believed it would happen. First contact protocols, medical procedures for unknown species, translation, software. Everything they had practiced back on Earth was about to be tested. What they did not know was that inside the alien ship, panic was spreading like fire through dry grass. Commander Velcris pressed his 6 arms against the metal wall of his command chamber and tried to control his breathing. His species had evolved from creatures that lived in trees, and when they were scared, they still felt the need to climb high and high. The humans had found them. He looked around at his crew. 36 of the finest warriors and scientists the Altarian Empire had ever produced. All of them were now cowering in the emergency shelter like children afraid of monsters in the dark. Sir, whispered his second in command. What do we do? The humans are trying to communicate with us. Velcris closed all 4 of his eyes. The humans, everyone in the galaxy knew about humans. They were the species that appeared out of nowhere 50 years ago and changed everything. The apex predators, the ones who treated the most dangerous situations like fun games. Do not answer them, he ordered. If we are very quiet, maybe they will think we are dead and leave us alone. But sir, our life support is failing. We will die if we do not get help soon. Then we die with honor. Velcris said, at least we will not live to see what the humans do to our civilization. The crew fell silent. They all knew the stories. Every species in the galaxy had heard them. Humans were not like other advanced species. They did not conquer through force or demand tribute or enslave weaker races. They were much worse than that they helped hand when humans helped you. Everything changed forever. The Zephyrians had been a proud warrior culture for 10,000 years. Then humans arrived and started asking questions about their fighting techniques. Within a year, the Zephyrians had accidentally invented a new form of combat that was so effective it ended all wars on their planet. Now they spent their time teaching dance classes because humans had mentioned that fighting looked a lot like dancing. The crystalline hegemony had ruled through fear for centuries, using their ability to turn other beings into crystal statues. Then humans showed up and started admiring how pretty the crystal people looked. Soon the hegemony was running art galleries instead of an empire because humans kept saying how beautiful their crystal work was. Every species that encountered humans had the same story. The humans would arrive with big smiles and friendly greetings. They would ask innocent questions and make casual observations. And somehow everything would change. Valkyries had seen the reports a human child had ended a 1,000-year religious war by asking why two species were fighting over who could touch a sacred rock. The child suggested they could take turns. The war ended the next day. A human cooking show had accidentally solved the energy crisis in the Outer Rim by showing how to make fusion reactors out of kitchen appliances. The recipe was still the most watched video in galactic history. A human who got lost while on vacation had discovered the cure for the Red Death Plague while looking for a bathroom. The cure turned out to be a common earth flower that humans used to make tea. This was what made humans so terrifying. They did not mean to change everything, they just did it by being themselves. Commander Velcrus heard footsteps in the corridor outside. The humans were boarding his ship, sir. One of his officers whispered. They are coming. What are your orders? Velcrus straightened his uniform and tried to look dignified. We will face them with honor, he said. When they ask us questions, we will answer truthfully. When they solve all our problems and accidentally destroy our way of life, we will thank them politely. This is the burden of meeting humans. The footsteps were getting closer. Velcrus could hear voices speaking in the strange human language. It sounded musical and soft, not at all like the harsh battle cries he had expected from the galaxy's apex predators. Through the walls, he could hear the humans talking to each other. I think their air is a bit thin, one voice said. We should bring oxygen masks. Their gravity is lighter too, said another voice. Watch your step, everyone. We do not want to accidentally break anything. Velcrus felt a strange mixture of terror and confusion. These did not sound like conquerors, they sounded like people who were worried about being polite guests. The voices were right outside the shelter now. I am reading life signs behind this door, the first voice said. They are all clustered together. Maybe they are injured. Should we knock? Asked another voice. I do not want to scare them. Velcrus looked at his crew with wide eyes. The apex predators of the galaxy were worried about being rude. A gentle knocking sound came from the door. Hello, called a voice in surprisingly good Alterian. We are humans from the ship New Soul. We saw that your ship is damaged. We want to help you. Are you hurt? Do you need medical assistance? Avellis stared at the door. This was not how apex predators were supposed to behave. Where were the demands for surrender? Where were the threats? Where was the violence that every species feared? Instead, the humans were asking if they needed help, and somehow that was the most terrifying thing of all. 3 days after finding the alien ship, Captain Juwan guided the New Soul toward Nexus Station. The massive trading post hung in space like a metal city with thousands of lights twinkling across its surface. Ships from dozens of different worlds docked at its many ports. Trading vessels, cargo haulers, passenger liners, all coming and going in a constant stream of activity. At least that was how it was supposed to look. Juwan frowned as she watched the docking approach. The station looked almost empty. Only a few ships were visible, and most of the docking bays appeared to be sealed shut. The usual busy traffic of ships moving around the station was nowhere to be seen. Something is wrong here, she said to her crew. Station Commander Hyunwoo stood beside her, looking out at the eerily quiet station. I have visited Nexus Station 12 times before, he said. It is always busy, always full of activity. I have never seen it like this. Maybe there is some kind of emergency, Lieutenant Daeho suggested. From his position at the weapons console, a disease outbreak or a natural disaster. Dr. Sumin checked her long-range scanners. I am not detecting any signs of damage or contamination, she said. The station appears to be fully operational. All systems are working normally. Then where is everyone? Minho asked from his communication station. I have been monitoring their frequencies. Traffic control is responding to our docking request, but they sound nervous, very nervous. The docking procedure took longer than usual. The station kept asking them to repeat their identification codes and ship registry numbers. 3 different officials wanted to speak with Captain Jiwan personally before they would approve the docking. Finally, they were cleared to dock at Bay 94, which was located in one of the quieter sections of the station. Jiwan led her team through the airlock and into the station corridors. The silence was deafening. Nexus Station was supposed to be one of the busiest places in the galaxy, a melting pot where hundreds of different species came to trade goods, information, and stories. The corridors should have been packed with aliens of every shape and size. Merchants hawking their wares, travelers sharing news from distant worlds, children playing games that spanned multiple species. Instead, the hallways were empty there. Footsteps echoed off the metal walls as they walked deeper into the station. The few shops they passed were closed. Blast shutters covered the windows, and no entry signs hung from every door. Some were written in languages none of them could read, but the meaning was clear: go away, stay out, do not disturb. Dr. Sumin stopped in front of what appeared to be a restaurant. The sign above the door showed pictures of food from at least 20 different worlds, but the lights were off and the door was locked. This place should be open, she said. I can smell cooking food inside. Someone is definitely in there. Adea tried to peer through the small window in the door. I can see movement inside, he said. Shadows moving around, but they are staying away from the windows. They continued walking through the empty corridors, past closed shops and sealed doorways. Occasionally they would catch glimpses of movement in the shadows, someone ducking into a side passage or a door quickly closing, but no one would come out to meet them. This is ridiculous, Engineer Kiwan said. We are not dangerous. We just want to buy some supplies and maybe get some information about the ship we found. That is, when they heard the first whisper, the humans are here. The voice came from somewhere above them. Jiwan looked up and saw a ventilation grate. One of the slats was slightly open, and she could just make out a pair of eyes watching them. Who is there? She called out. We are friendly. We just want to talk. The eyes disappeared, and they heard the sound of someone crawling rapidly through the ventilation system. More whispers started coming from all around them, hidden voices speaking in languages they could not understand, but the tone was unmistakable. Fear, panic, terror. They are just standing there, said one voice. This one spoke in Galactic Common, so the humans could understand. Why are they just standing there? That makes them even more scary. Maybe they are planning something, said another voice. Something big, something that will change everything. Remember what happened to the Nixarians when humans visited their world? The first voice replied. They had a stable government for 3,000 years. Then one human asked why they needed so many different forms to buy food. Next thing you know, they invented democracy and universal basic income. And the Kilarian hive mind said a third voice ruled their species for 10,000 years. One human child asked them why they all had to think the same thoughts. Now they have individualism and art therapy. Juan and her team exchanged confused looks. They were starting to understand that their reputation in the galaxy was very different from what they had expected. Lieutenant Deho leaned close to Jiwon and whispered, Captain, I think they are afraid of us. But why? She whispered back. We have never hurt anyone. We just explore and try to help people. That might be exactly why they are afraid, said Dr. Suminthi. Kept walking until they found one shop that was actually open. It was a small trading post run by a nervous-looking alien with blue skin and 3 eyes. The creature was clearly trying to close up shop when they walked in, but he froze when he saw them. His name tag read Kixil in several different languages. He stood behind his counter, clutching what appeared to be some kind of emergency beacon. Please, he said in shaky Galactic Common, please do not ask me any questions. I have a family. I have younglings. They depend on me for food and shelter. We just want some information, Captain Jawan said gently. We found an abandoned ship, and we want to help the people. Insidexixol made a sound like a dying animal. Abandoned ship, he repeated. Oh, no. Oh, no. Which ship? Where did you find it? It was drifting in the outer sectors, Dr. Sumin said. Large vessel covered in strange symbols. We detected life signs inside, but they will not respond to our communications. The Alterian ship, Kixel whispered, and all three of his eyes went wide with horror. You found the Alterian ship, do you know something about it? Juan Eskachixel looked around his shop as if checking for escape routes the Alterians were trying to run. Away, he said. They heard that humans were exploring their sector of space, so they packed up their most important people and tried to flee to the other side of the galaxy run. Away from us, Minho sounded hurt, but we are nice, we would never hurt anyone. That is exactly the problem, Kixil said. You are nice, you are helpful, you solve problems, you make friends with everyone. And every time you do that, you accidentally change everything. The human crew stared at him in confusion. Engineer Kiwan scratched his head. I still do not understand what is wrong with helping. Pioplexel sat down heavily on the stool behind his counter. Let me tell you what happens when humans help people, he said. First, you arrive somewhere with big smiles and friendly greetings. You ask innocent questions about how things work. You share stories about your own world. You try to be helpful then. Someone mentions a problem they are having, maybe their government is corrupt, or their economy is failing, or they are having trouble with their neighbors, so you suggest a solution, something simple, something obvious, something that worked on Earth, and it works. It always works, but it works so well that it changes everything. The government becomes honest, the economy becomes fair. The neighbors become friends, but that is good, Daho said. That sounds like exactly what should happen for you, maybe, Kixel replied. But what about the people who made their living from the corrupt government? What about the merchants who profited from the unfair economy? What about the weapons manufacturers who sold arms to the fighting neighbors? Suddenly they all have to find new jobs, new purposes, new ways to live. Their entire world changes overnight, all because some human asked an innocent question or made a casual suggestion. Dr. Sumin was beginning to understand. We accidentally change entire civilizations just by being ourselves, exactly, Kixil said, and the worst part is you do not even realize you are doing it. You think you are just being friendly and helpful. You have no idea that your casual conversations are reshaping the galaxy. The human crew stood in silence processing this information. They had come to the galaxy as explorers, hoping to make friends and learn about other cultures. They had never imagined that their very presence could be seen as a threat, and now Kixil continued, his voice getting higher with panic. You have found the Alterian ship, the ship full of refugees who were trying to escape from you, and you want to help them. He laughed, but it was not a happy sound. It was the laugh of someone who had given up all hope. This is it, he said. This is how the Alterian Empire ends, not with war or conquest or natural disaster, but with humans trying to be nice outside the shop. They could hear more whispers spreading through the station. The news was traveling fast. The humans had found the Alterian ship. They were planning to help the survivors. Emergency broadcasts began transmitting across the galaxy. The apex predators were on the move again. Another civilization was about to discover what it meant to receive human kindness, and somewhere in the darkness of Space 36, Alterian refugees huddled in their damaged ship, knowing that their old way of life was about to end forever, all because the most dangerous species in the galaxy genuinely wanted to help them. Captain Jiwan sat across from Kixil in his small trading shop, trying to make sense of what the frightened alien had just told her. The blue-skinned creature kept glancing toward the door as if he expected danger to walk through it at any moment. His three eyes never stopped moving, and his hands shook as he poured himself a cup of something that smelled like burned metal. Let me understand this correctly, Jiwan said, speaking slowly and carefully. You are telling me that other species in the galaxy are afraid of humans because we helped them. Chixel made that strange laughing sound again, the one that was not really a laugh at all. You still do not get it, do you? He said. You think helping is simple, you think it is always good, but you humans do not just help, you transform. Darsumin leaned forward in her chair. What do you mean transform? Kixel set down his cup and looked at each of the humans in turn. Let me tell you about the Vorthan Confederation. He said they were a proud species, warriors who had conquered 47 star systems. Their whole culture was built around strength and dominance. The strong ruled the weak. That was their way for over 5,000 years. What happened to them? Minho asked. Humans happened, Kixel replied. A human anthropologist visited their homeworld. She was studying their culture, writing a paper about warrior societies. She asked them one simple question. Why do you think strength is more important than wisdom? The alien paused and took another sip of his drink. That question changed everything. The Vorthans started thinking about it, really thinking. They realized that their smartest people were often their weakest people physically. So they started putting wise people in charge instead of strong people. Within 10 years, the Vorthan Confederation had transformed into the Vorthan Republic. Their entire government changed, their military became a peacekeeping force. Their economy shifted from conquest to education. Now they are known throughout the galaxy as the best teachers and philosophers. Lieutenant Deho scratched his head, but that sounds like a good thing. Why would anyone be upset about that? Because Kixel said, his voice rising. The Vorthan weapon manufacturers lost their jobs. The warrior class had to find new careers. The entire military-industrial complex collapsed overnight. Millions of people had to completely change their lives, all because one human asked one innocent question. Engineer Kiwan was beginning to understand. So when we try to help, we accidentally change things we never meant to change. Exactly, Kixel said, and it happens every single time. Let me tell you about the Crystalline Empire. They had a rigid caste system that lasted for 8,000 years. Everyone knew their place in society from birth. No one could move up or down the social ladder. A human family visited their world on vacation. The human children saw how the system worked and asked why some people were treated as less important than others. The children suggested that maybe everyone should get to choose their own job. The Crystalline Empire had never considered this idea. Within 5 years, their entire social structure had collapsed. The caste system was replaced with a merit-based society. Everyone could now become whatever they wanted to better. Sumin nodded slowly. And I suppose that upset a lot of people who benefited from the old system. The upper castes lost their special privileges. Kixil confirmed the ruling families had to actually work for a living instead of just being born into power. The entire foundation of their civilization changed because some human children asked why things had to be unfair. The human crew sat in uncomfortable silence. They were beginning to see a pattern every time humans encountered other species. Their natural tendency to question unfair systems and suggest improvements had massive unintended consequences. But surely, Jiwan said, some of these changes were good for most people. The average person must have been happier. Of course they were happier, Kixil agreed. That is what makes it so terrifying. When humans change a civilization, they usually make life better for the majority of people, but they also destroy the old ways completely. Nothing stays the same after humans arrive. He stood up and began pacing around his small shop, his 3 eyes darting nervously toward the windows. The Nixarian Republic had the same government for 3,000 years. He continued, stable, predictable. Boring. A human diplomat visited and asked why they needed 17 different permits just to open a small business. The human suggested they could maybe reduce the bureaucracy a little bit. Within 2 years, the Nixarians had completely reformed their government. They eliminated 90% of their bureaucratic departments. They created a simple, efficient system where anyone could start a business in one day. The economy boomed, unemployment disappeared, everyone was prosperous. Minho brightened. That sounds wonderful for most people. Yes, Kixil said, but what about the thousands of government workers who lost their jobs? What about the permit officers and form processors and license inspectors? Their entire way of life vanished overnight. The humans were starting to see the bigger picture. Their casual suggestions and innocent questions were not just helpful advice. They were catalysts that triggered massive social changes across entire civilizations. And now, Kixil continued, you have found the Altarian refugee ship, the ship full of people who were so terrified of meeting humans that they abandoned their homeworld and tried to flee to the other side of the galaxy. We just want to help them, Jiwan said quietly. We detected that their life support systems are failing. People are going to die if we do not do something. I know, Kixil replied, and his voice was full of sympathy. That is what makes this so tragic. You genuinely want to help them. You have no evil intentions. You are not trying to conquer anyone or steal anything. You just want to save lives. So what is wrong with that? Deho asked. What is wrong? Kixil sat back down and looked directly at each human. Is that the Altarians know what will happen the moment you board their ship, the moment you start asking questions about how they live and why they do things the way they do. Their entire civilization will begin to change. pulled up a holographic display showing news reports from across the galaxy headlines. Scroll past in dozens of different languages, but the translation software made them readable. Human agricultural team accidentally solves food crisis on Kepler. 7 human child ends religious war by suggesting everyone share sacred site. Human cook show teaches alien species new fusion techniques. Economy transforms overnight. Human tourist questions local marriage customs. Entire social structure reformed within months. The list went on and on. Every headline told the same story: humans arriving somewhere with good intentions and accidentally triggering massive changes. You see, Kixel said, turning off the display. This is why the galaxy fears you. Not because you are cruel or violent, but because you are kind and curious. Every time you try to help someone, you end up changing their entire world. Dr. Sumin stared at the blank holographic projector. So the Alterians would rather die than be rescued by us. They would rather preserve their way of life. Kixel confirmed, even if it means death. At least they would die as Alterians, living according to their ancient customs and traditions. If you rescue them, they will live, but they will no longer be the people they once were. The weight of this knowledge settled over the human crew like a heavy blanket. They had come to the galaxy as explorers and diplomats, hoping to make friends and learn about other cultures. Instead, they had discovered that their very presence was seen as an existential threat. Captain Jiwan stood up slowly. We have a choice to make, she said. We can respect their wishes and let them die as they choose. Or we can save their lives and accept that we might change who they are. What would you choose? Kixil asked quietly. Jian looked at her crew. Each of them was struggling with the same moral dilemma: save lives but destroy a culture, or preserve a culture but let people die. We are going to save them, she said finally, because that is who we are. We cannot stand by and watch people die when we have the power to help them, even if they hate us for it, even if it changes everything. Kixil nodded sadly. I know, he said. That is exactly what I expected you to say. That is what makes you so terrifying. You will always choose to help no matter what the consequences. You cannot help being human. As the crew prepared to leave the shop, Kixil called out to them one last time. Captain, he said, when you rescue the Alterians, please try to remember that you are not just saving 36 lives, you are ending a civilization that has existed for thousands of years. Try to be gentle with them. They are about to lose everything they have ever known. And it will all be because the most dangerous species in the galaxy wanted to be kind. Back aboard the new Soul, Captain Jiwan called her senior crew to the main briefing room. The conversation with Kixel had shaken all of them, and they needed to understand exactly what they were dealing with. The room felt heavy with uncomfortable silence as they took their seats around the oval table. Dr. Sumin had spent the last 2 hours downloading files from the Nexus Station database. Her tablet was filled with reports, documents, and news articles, all tagged with the same classification. Human incident reports. There are hundreds of them, she said, scrolling through the files. Every time our species has made contact with another civilization, it has been documented, analyzed, and filed away. The galaxy has been keeping track of us. Show US the worst ones, Lieutenant Deho said grimly. Suman tapped her screen and a holographic display filled the air above the table. The first file appeared with an official seal from the Galactic Documentation Bureau. Earth Standard Date 2387, she read aloud. Human agricultural vessel Fertile Fields makes contact with the Drought Worlds Confederation. The humans were invited to help solve a food crisis that had lasted 300 years. What happened? Engineer Kiwan asked. The human farmers took one look at the Drought Worlds and asked why they were not using hydroponics. Sumin continued. They showed the locals how to grow food using water and artificial nutrients instead of soil. Within 6 months, the Drought Worlds had more food than they knew what to do with. That sounds like a success story, Minho said. The success was the problem, Sumin replied. The Drought World's economy was based on food scarcity. The ruling class controlled the population by controlling food distribution. When everyone suddenly had enough to eat, the government collapsed. The entire social order fell apart. People did not know how to live in a world without hunger. She switched to another file. Earth Standard Date 2389. Human Entertainment Company broadcasts Earth television shows to the Hive worlds. The shows were supposed to be cultural exchange programming. Juan leaned forward. What went wrong? The hive worlds were a collective consciousness. Every person shared the same thoughts and feelings for 50,000 years. They worked together like a single organism. Then they watched human TV shows and learned about individual personalities. The hologram showed news footage of chaos in the streets, millions of beings who had never had their own thoughts. Suddenly developing individual minds, the collective consciousness shattered overnight. Entire cities stopped functioning, Sumin said, because people were no longer automatically cooperating with each other. They had to learn how to make personal decisions, how to disagree with others, how to be individuals. The transition took decades and millions died from the chaos. The crew stared at the images in horror. They had done this. Their own species' entertainment had accidentally destroyed one of the oldest civilizations in the galaxy. There are more files, Sumin said, much more. She showed them report after report, human medical ship visits plague worlds and asks why they are not using basic quarantine procedures. Plague eliminated in 3 weeks. Entire medical establishment forced to retrain human child on school trip asks alien tour guide why their species has wars. Child suggests they try talking to their enemies instead of fighting. 3-century galactic conflict ends when someone actually tries diplomacy. Human chef teaching cooking class accidentally discovers that combining certain alien spices creates a new form of energy. Galactic fuel shortage solved overnight. 47 worlds' economic systems collapse because energy is now too cheap to profit from. The reports went on and on. Each one told the same story: humans arriving somewhere with innocent intentions, humans asking obvious questions, humans making casual suggestions, and civilizations changing forever. Captain G1 sat back in her chair, feeling overwhelmed. We are not explorers, she said quietly. We are a force of nature. Everywhere we go, we destroy the old world and create a new one, but the new worlds are usually better. Dr. Sumin pointed out most of these reports show that the average person ended up happier, healthier, more free after the changes. That does not make it right, Deho said. We are making these decisions for entire species without asking their permission. We are playing God with civilizations that have existed for thousands of years. Minho pulled up another file on his personal tablet. Look at this one, he said. Human family goes on vacation to see the crystal caves of Aldera. They ask the tour guide why the caves are off limits to most people. The guide explains that only the wealthy can afford to visit. The family suggests that maybe everyone should be able to see something so beautiful. Within a year, the Altherans had completely reformed their economic system. The caves became public property, and their entire concept of wealth changed. Engineer Kiwan shook his head. Do we even realize we are doing this? Are we conscious of the effect we have on other people? That is the most disturbing part, Jiwan said. We are not doing it on purpose. We are just being ourselves. We ask questions because we are curious. We make suggestions because we want to help. We share our ideas because that is what humans do. The room fell silent again as they absorbed the full weight of their situation. They were not just individuals exploring the galaxy. They were representatives of a species that had somehow become the most powerful force for change in known. Space Dr. Sumin brought up one final file. This one is different. She said it is not about us changing other species. It is about how other species see us. The hologram showed a document titled Threat Assessment Human Species Classification. Level Omega Deho. Read. What does that mean? Sumin scrolled through the document. It means civilizational extinction threat, not through violence or conquest, but through cultural transformation. Any species that makes extended contact with humans will cease to exist in their original form within 50 years. The document included detailed analysis of human behavior patterns. Humans display unusual levels of empathy and curiosity. They cannot observe suffering without attempting to alleviate it. They cannot encounter inefficient systems without suggesting improvements. They cannot witness unfairness without questioning its necessity. Their suggestions are often simple and obvious, but other species have never considered them due to cultural blind spots or traditional thinking. Human perspectives frequently expose fundamental flaws in long-established systems. Most disturbing of all, humans genuinely believe they are being helpful. They have no awareness of their disruptive potential. They approach every situation with good intentions, making them impossible to defend against. Captain Ji-won stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the stars. We came to the galaxy hoping to make friends, she said. Instead, we are the thing that nightmares are made of, not nightmares, Minho said softly. Change is what they fear we represent. The end of their old ways and the beginning of something new. The question is, Dr. Sumin said, what do we do now? We know what we are. We know what happens when we try to help. Do we stop exploring? Do we go back to Earth and never leave our solar system again, or do we accept that this is who we are? Engineer Kiwan added. We are the species that asks uncomfortable questions and suggests obvious solutions. Maybe the galaxy needs us even if they do not want us. Juan turned back to face her crew. The Alterian ship is still out there, she said. 36 people are dying while we sit here debating philosophy. We can spend forever analyzing our impact on galactic civilization. Or we can go save some lives. What if saving them destroys their culture? Daeho asked. Then their culture gets destroyed, Ji-won replied, but they get to live. And maybe they will build something better from the pieces. The crew looked at each other. Each of them was thinking the same thing. They were about to do exactly what every other species feared. They were about to encounter people in trouble and try to help them, and nothing would ever be the same again. Dr. Sumin closed the files and shut off the holographic display. We are who we are, she said. We cannot change our nature any more than they can change theirs. The only choice we have is whether to embrace it or run from it. Ji-won nodded. Set course for the Alterian ship, she ordered. We have people to save and a galaxy to accidentally transform. As the new soul turned toward the coordinates of the drifting alien vessel, the crew prepared for what they knew would be another human incident, another civilization about to discover what it meant to be helped by the most dangerous species in the galaxy. The airlock door opened with a soft hiss, and Captain Ji-won stepped aboard the Alterian ship. The corridors were much larger than those on human vessels built for beings who stood nearly 3 meters tall. The walls were covered in the same strange symbols they had seen on the outside, and the air smelled like copper and ozone behind. Her Dr. Sumin carried a medical kit and portable life support equipment. Engineer Kiwan had his repair tools and diagnostic scanners. Lieutenant Daeho brought emergency supplies, food, water, and basic medicine that might work on alien biology. The ship felt wrong. Somehow the lights were too dim, the gravity was lighter than Earth normal, and there was an underlying vibration that suggested the engines were working much harder than they should. Everything about the vessel screamed of systems pushed beyond their limits. This way, Captain Ji-won said, following the readings on her scanner. The life signs are concentrated in the lower sections, probably an emergency shelter or safe room. They moved through the corridors slowly, carefully. Their magnetic boots clanked against the metal floor with each step. The sound echoed strangely in the oversized hallways designed for beings much larger than humans. Dr. Sumin stopped at what appeared to be a damaged section of wall. Blast scoring marked the metal, and several panels had been torn away, exposing the inner workings of the ship. Something hit them hard, she said. Whatever caused this damage, it was not an accident. Pirates. Maybe, Engineer Kiwan suggested, examining the damaged systems, or they could have hit some kind of space debris at high speed. Damage patterns are consistent with weapons fire, Lieutenant Daeho observed, running his fingers along the blast marks. Someone attacked this ship. They continued deeper into the vessel, passing through sections that showed increasing signs of damage. Emergency lighting flickered overhead, and the air grew thinner as they moved away from the main life support systems. Captain Ji-won checked her scanner again. The life signs were just ahead, clustered together in what appeared to be a reinforced section of the ship. She could make out 36 distinct readings, all gathered in a single room. They found the emergency shelter behind a heavy blast door that had been sealed from the inside. Captain Ji-won approached the door and activated her universal translator. Hello, she called out in what she hoped was a friendly tone. We are humans from the exploration ship New Seoul. We detected that your vessel is in distress. We are here to help. Silence. Dr. Sumin tried a different approach. We have medical supplies and repair equipment, she said. Your life support systems are failing. We can fix them. Still no response. Engineer Kiwan stepped up to the door and began examining the locking mechanism. It is sealed tight, he said. They have activated full emergency protocols. This door is designed to keep people out even if the rest of the ship is compromised. Can you open it, Lieutenant Deho asked. I can, but it will take some time, Kiwan replied. The locking system is incredibly sophisticated, much more advanced than anything we use. While Kiwan worked on the locks, Captain Jiwan continued trying to communicate with the beings inside. We know you can hear us, she said. We are not here to hurt you, we just want to make sure you are safe, eh? Voice finally came through the door, speaking in heavily accented but understandable galactic common. Go away, it said. The voice was deep and resonant, with harmonics that suggested the speaker was much larger than a human. You have done enough damage already. Damage? Captain Jiwan looked confused. We just arrived. We have not done anything yet. That is what makes you so dangerous, the voice replied. You do not even know what you do. Every human says the same thing. We are just here to help. We do not mean any harm, but civilizations fall anyway. Dr. Sumin stepped closer to the door. My name is Dr. Sumin. I am a medical officer. Your life support readings indicate that several of your people are injured, possibly dying. Please let us help them. We would rather die as Alterians than live as something else, the voice said. Your help comes with a price we cannot afford to pay. The humans exchanged glances. This was exactly what Kixel had warned them about. The Alterians were so afraid of human influence that they preferred death to rescue. Captain Kiwan tried a different approach. What if we promise not to ask any questions, she said. What if we just fix your engines and life support and leave immediately? The voice laughed, but there was no humor in it. You cannot help asking questions. It is your nature. You will see how we live and wonder why we do things the way we do. You will make innocent suggestions that seem obvious to you, and our world will change forever. Engineer Kiwan had been working steadily on the lock mechanism. Got it, he whispered. The door is ready to open. Wait. Captain Jiwan held up her hand. She spoke to the door again. What are your names? She asked. I am Captain Jiwan. This is Dr. Sumin, Engineer Kiwan, and Lieutenant Deho. We are not just humans. We are individuals with our own thoughts and feelings. Another silence. Then the voice replied reluctantly. I am Commander Velcris of the Alterian Imperial Guard. These are my officers and crew. We were ordered to evacuate important civilians from our home world when we learned that humans were exploring our sector. Why were you ordered to evacuate? Jiwan asked. Because our government studied the reports from other worlds. The commander said they saw what happens when humans make contact with a civilization. They decided that our most important cultural leaders should be moved to safety before the inevitable changes. Dr. Sumin felt her heart sink. They were not refugees fleeing war or disaster. They were cultural treasures being moved to preserve them from human influence. Commander Velcris continued, speaking through the door. We are carrying the greatest artists, philosophers, and historians of our people, people who represent thousands of years of Alterian culture and tradition. If they are changed by human contact, our entire heritage could be lost. Now Captain Jiwan understood the full weight of the situation. These were not just 36 individuals, they were the living embodiment of an entire civilization, the equivalent of taking Earth's greatest thinkers and artists and putting them all on one ship. But you are dying, she said. Your ship is damaged, your life support is failing. How does preserving your culture help if you are all dead? At least our children will remember us as we truly were, Commander Velcris replied. If we accept your help, we will survive, but we will no longer be Alterian. We will become something new, something shaped by human ideas. Lieutenant Deho stepped forward. Commander, he said, what if we are already too late? What if just talking to us through this door has already started the process of change? The silence that followed was deafening. Dr. Sumin seized the moment. You are already thinking about our perspective, she said. You are already considering ideas that might not have occurred to you before. The change has already begun. Commander Velcris' voice was quieter when he spoke again. You are right, he said. Even this conversation is changing how I think about our situation. I find myself wondering if there might be a way to preserve our culture while still accepting your help. Engineer Kiwan activated the door mechanism. The heavy blast door slid open, revealing the interior of the emergency shelter. 36 aliens looked back at them. The Alterians were magnificent beings, tall and graceful, with 6 arms and skin that shimmered with natural patterns. Like living art, their large eyes held an intelligence that was both ancient and profound. They wore robes and armor that spoke of a culture with deep traditions and formal hierarchies. Commander Velcris stepped forward. He was clearly the leader. Larger than the others, with more elaborate clothing and decorations that marked his rank, He looked down at the four humans, and his expression was a mixture of fear, resignation, and curiosity. So the voice said, "You are the apex predators of the galaxy." "You are smaller than I expected," Captain Iwan smiled. "We get that a lot," she said. "Now let us help you fix your ship and get you somewhere safe." Commander Velcris studied her face for a long moment. Then he did something that surprised everyone. He smiled. "Back very well," he said. "Let the transformation begin." And with those words, the last free Altarian civilization took its first step into an uncertain but hopeful future, guided by the most dangerous force in the galaxy, the desire to help. 6 months had passed since the rescue of the Altarian ship, and Captain Jawan found herself sitting in the most important meeting room in the galaxy. The Galactic Council chamber was a massive circular space with representatives from over 300 different species. Each delegate sat in specially designed seating that accommodated their unique biology. Jawan felt very small in her human-sized chair, surrounded by beings that ranged from tiny crystalline creatures to massive gas-filled entities that floated in specialized containers. She had never wanted to be a diplomat, but somehow she had become the unofficial spokesperson for humanity in galactic affairs. The current speaker was a delegate from the Centauri Federation, a tall, thin being with translucent skin and 4 arms. She was reading from a report that glowed with soft blue light. "The situation in the outer rim sectors has been resolved," she announced. "The human archaeological team led by Dr. Sunho believed they were simply documenting historical sites for academic research. Instead, they discovered that what they thought were ancient ruins were actually dormant doomsday weapons left behind by a long-extinct civilization." Murmurs filled the chamber as delegates discussed this news in dozens of different languages. The universal translators worked overtime to keep up with the conversations. The weapons had been threatening 17 different star systems for over 2,000 years, the Centauri delegate continued. No species had been able to safely approach them or understand their purpose. The human team identified them as weapons within 3 days and completely disarmed them within a week. "How did they do it?" asked a representative from the Silicon Collective. "They treated the weapons like a puzzle," the delegate replied. Dr. Sunho said later that the control systems reminded him of ancient Earth video games. His team approached the disarmament process as if they were trying to beat a challenging game. Rather than being afraid of the weapons, they were excited by the intellectual challenge. The chamber fell silent. This was typical human behavior, finding the most dangerous situations interesting rather than terrifying. Council President Zareth called for the next item on the agenda. She was one of the oldest beings in the galaxy, a member of a species that had been exploring space when most other civilizations were still learning to make fire. "We have received the quarterly report on human activities," she announced. "The numbers continue to be unprecedented." A holographic display appeared in the center of the chamber, showing statistics that made many delegates shift uncomfortably in their seats. Civilizations contacted by humans in the past 6 months, 47 major governmental changes following human contact, 31 economic systems reformed after human suggestions, 28 religious or philosophical revolutions inspired by human questions, 19 wars ended through human mediation, 12 ancient problems solved by human curiosity, 8 new technologies discovered through human academic research. 6. The list continued, and with each item the delegates looked more nervous. They were witnessing the systematic transformation of galactic civilization, one human interaction at a time. Captain Guan was asked to address the council. She stood up and activated her personal translator so that her words would be heard clearly throughout the chamber. Honored delegates, she began. "I know that many of you are concerned about my species' activities. I want to assure you that we have no intention of conquering anyone or forcing changes on unwilling civilizations." A delegate from the Hive clusters interrupted. "That is exactly what makes you so dangerous," he said. "You have no intention of changing anything, you just do it naturally." Jiwan nodded. "I understand your concerns. We have been studying the reports about our impact on other civilizations. We are trying to be more careful about how we interact with other species, but you cannot change your fundamental nature," said a representative from the Crystal Hegemony. "You will always ask questions. You will always try to help. You will always suggest improvements. It is who you are." "That is true," Jiwan admitted. "So the question becomes, how do we handle this reality? Do we isolate ourselves from the rest of the galaxy? Do we stop exploring and helping people, or do we find a way to work together? Council President Zareth leaned forward in her ancient seat. What do you propose? Captain Juan activated a holographic display of her own. Instead of seeing human contact as a threat, she said, what if we treated it as an opportunity? Her display showed a proposal that her crew had been working on for months. What if civilizations could choose the level of human interaction they wanted? Some species might want full cultural exchange. They would accept the changes that come with human contact in exchange for the benefits. Others might prefer limited contact trade and scientific cooperation, but with careful protocols to minimize cultural disruption, and some might choose no contact at all. Lieutenant Deho added from his seat in the gallery. They would be left alone to develop at their own pace. The chamber buzzed with discussion. This was not what they had expected. The humans were not proposing to change their behavior. They were suggesting a system that acknowledged their nature while giving other species choices. Dr. Sumin stood up to address the medical aspects of the proposal. We have also been working on ways to share human medical and scientific knowledge without forcing cultural changes. She said we could provide treatments and technologies through intermediary species rather than direct contact. Engineer Kiwan added his perspective on the technical side. We could establish automated systems to share information technology, databases that other species could access without having to interact directly with humans. The debate that followed lasted for hours. Some delegates were intrigued by the proposal, others remained skeptical. A few species declared that they wanted immediate full contact with humans, hoping to benefit from the rapid changes. Finally, Council President Zareth called for order. The proposal has merit, she said, but it requires trust. Trust that humans will respect the boundaries that other species set. Trust that species will be honest about what level of contact they can handle. Jiwan stood again. We understand that trust must be earned, she said. We are willing to start small, limited contact with willing species while we develop better protocols. We want to be part of the galactic community, not a threat to it. The voting process took 3 days. Each species had to decide not just whether to support the proposal, but what level of human contact they were comfortable with. When the results were announced, they surprised everyone. 47 species voted for full cultural exchange. They wanted maximum human contact, accepting all the changes that would come with it. 112 species chose limited contact. They wanted trade, scientific cooperation, and diplomatic relations, but with careful cultural protections. 96 species requested minimal contact, basic diplomatic recognition, but no direct interaction unless absolutely necessary, and 41 species chose complete isolation. They wanted no human contact at all, and their decision would be respected. Captain Jiwan felt a mixture of relief and responsibility as she heard the results. Humanity had been given a chance to remain part of the galactic community, but they would have to prove they could respect other species' choices. The Alterian refugees had become a symbol of successful human integration. Commander Velcris had worked with human advisors to help his people adapt to their new reality. They had established a colony world where Alterian culture could evolve naturally, incorporating human ideas while maintaining their core identity. 6 months ago, Commander Velcris had been terrified of human contact. Now he served as an advisor to other species who were considering limited human interaction. The galaxy had changed. There was no going back to the way things were before humans arrived. But perhaps it was not entirely a bad thing. As Captain Jiwan prepared to leave the council chamber, she was approached by Kixil, the nervous alien trader who had first explained human reputation to her. Captain, he said, I wanted to thank you. Thank me for what? For proving that humans can learn. Kixil replied, when I first met you, I thought you were a force of nature, something that could not be controlled or reasoned with, but you listened to our concerns. You found a way to be human while still respecting our fears. Jiwan smiled. We are still going to accidentally change things, she warned. We cannot help being curious and helpful, I know, Kixil said, but now we have a choice in how much change we can handle, and that makes all the difference. As the new soul departed from the council station, Captain Jiwan looked out at the stars. Each point of light represented worlds full of beings who were now free to choose their own level of interaction. With humanity, some would embrace change, others would resist it, a few would find middle ground between tradition and transformation. But, for the first time since humans had entered the galaxy, the choice belonged to the most dangerous species. In the galaxy had learned to ask permission before accidentally changing everything, and somehow that made them even more dangerous. Because now other species trusted them, which meant the real transformation was just beginning.